think Nigerians just really have their ish together, their culture together. Whenever you meet a Nigerian, like they're all doctors here in the USA, their families are together, they take marriage seriously.
Candace Owens is a polarizing figure. Since her recent fall from grace with the Daily Wire and the Jewish community due to statements that were considered anti Semitic, she now exists in her own space. Quite frankly, she's pissed off a lot of people: the queer community, Black folks, celebrities, women, men. I mean, the list goes on. And as an open Black conservative, she already stands in the minority. Yet and still, she has a lot of criticism towards the Black American community, alleging that Juneteenth is a made-up holiday and that Black Americans are quick to fall into victim mentality and cry a little too much about racism. Some may look at her side eyes because she is married to a European, or feel that by nature of her having a white husband, that should disqualify her completely from speaking on Black issues. But whether you agree or disagree, she still has a large pull and a lot of influence. Recently, while on the topic of Black culture, she had something really interesting to say, particularly as it relates to Nigeria. I'll play it for you and then we'll break it down.
By the way, everyone was beautiful. The runner-up, I want to shout out Nigeria. I don't think we pulled a picture of her. I meant to tell you guys to pull a picture of her. Absolutely stunning, the runner-up. And she, I think, was the first Nigerian to place in the top 5. I am a Nigeria stan. I think Nigerians just really have their ish together, their culture together. Whenever you meet a Nigerian, like they're all doctors here in the USA, their families are together, they take marriage seriously. I wish I was Nigerian. I do, a little bit, but I'm not. Not even a little bit. I'm not Nigerian, but they do have a very good culture, and that woman was positively stunning. I actually don't want to be rude. Give me 1 second. I want to look up her name because she was really beautiful, and I feel like I'm just saying like a Nigerian woman, and that's a little bit disrespectful. Give me 1 second, you guys. Don't kill me in the chat for the pronunciation here, but I also mispronounced Ava's last name. But Chidimma Adetshina. Oh, look at this. She's stunning. Just beautiful skin. Absolutely beautiful. Chidimma Adetshina represented Nigeria, and she was the runner-up. So also credit to her. We had 2 beautiful women at the top. I just loved it. I agree. We're so back. We are allowed to be hot and beautiful again.
Now, on the topic of Nigeria, for those of you who didn't know, I actually had the chance to visit it for the first time earlier this year, and that now marks my 3rd time of having visited the African continent in general. Now, one thing I can say that I've noticed about African cultures, just from the different things that I've observed, it seems like they have a very strong emphasis on family structures, family systems, family culture. Like, that's just something I love to watch in action and something that I've seen each time I've had a chance to visit. Another thing that I've noticed is that there seems to be a really strong culture of honor, particularly for authority figures, whether it be, chiefs, local chiefs or kings of regions or pastors, spiritual leaders. Like, there is a really big culture of honor there. I also noticed that there is just an innate respect and honor that they have for their elders. Like, people just listen to their elders. Even if they don't agree, they listen to them. Like, the elders really, they have so much authority there. And then I've also noticed that there is such a high value on education. And I don't know if it's because you have to pay for education there, unlike in the States where pretty much, education is free up until 18, up until 12th grade. There you have to pay for elementary, middle school, high school, and so there just seems to be a really high emphasis on education. And I'm sure Nigeria, like any country, any culture, has its unique set of issues. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like they don't. I've even been told by more than one African that, again, education is a huge value for Africans. And because of that, it is not uncommon to find African immigrants who come over to the United States, get higher education, sometimes even gain multiple degrees, and even find themselves in some of the best schools, the best colleges, and in higher white-collar positions. But one thing that Candace Owens said that stood out to me was when she mentioned that every time she meets a Nigerian, they are, they're doing really well, they're really successful. And honestly, I've heard this before, right? I've this assumption that Africans come over and dominate, whether it's in education, whether it's in Hollywood, whether it's in STEM, the sciences, medicine. But I mean, is that really true? Are Africans really doing better than African Americans or Black Americans, or is that just an assumption? I ran across this article that breaks this down to the T. And while I'm not going to go over every aspect of it, there's a few things that I want to highlight that I think really clarify this question. This article goes on to explain how over the last few decades, there has been an increase of African immigrants, but by and large, Africans are still the least admitted and the most deported. But there's a paragraph right here that I think gives some really key insight as to exactly why it seems as if Africans are doing very well. Right here it says, owing to the highly selective nature of international migration from sub-Saharan Africa, Black immigrants from the region now have some of the highest levels of education in the United States. They are far more likely to be college graduates compared to the US born and are almost as likely to be employed in management, business, science, and arts occupations. So basically what this paragraph is saying is that when African immigrants are allowed into the States, they are choosing the cream of the crop. They are choosing people who are educated, generally Africans, who have privileges, the most productive, the higher class, the wealthier, the best that Africa has to offer, generally speaking. Of course, this isn't, going to be every case, but that's a general rule. The process is very selective. Compared to other highly skilled individuals, most Black African immigrants have not been able to reach a level of socioeconomic success that matches their education payment. Instead, comparisons of their educational profile with other standard measures of their well-being have revealed a paradox. Far too often, the latter falls below what one would expect given their high levels of educational attainment. So basically, again, they're saying while Africans are generally very well educated, more so than Black people in America, often yet and still, when you follow the trajectory and when you follow their socioeconomic status, the math isn't math. Their degree doesn't necessarily equate to the money that they should be getting for the degree that they have. Compared to the US born, for example, Black African immigrants are far more likely to be college graduates, but are about 50% more likely to live in poverty. So basically, structural challenges such as their education not being accepted in the United States of America, and immigrants essentially having to start from scratch coming to school. That means they have to now get integrated into the education system. They have to try to maybe get loans or find money or figure out how to get funding to do so, along with the different cultural challenges they may meet. And then obviously racism, as I mentioned before. African immigrants experience the same racism that Black Americans do. But the thing about Black Americans, we are used to racism. And in Africa, they have their other challenges, but they don't really deal with racism in that sense because everyone there is Black. They deal with more tribalism, and there are impacts of colonization, but it's not the same way that it is for Black Americans. And so really, when you break this down, what the research is showing is that it's not necessarily true that these Africans are coming over and dominating, and many of them are actually facing structural challenges. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't overcome, and that doesn't mean that they're not finding ways to cope, but they are facing challenges, and sometimes even more so than Black Americans, because of the cultural differences and because some of the different hoops they have to jump through that they're just simply not prepared for. In conclusion, yes, there are certainly Nigerians who are able to be very successful and find themselves in leadership positions, but there are also plenty African immigrants who come over and experience structural institutional challenges and face poverty in spite of their educational attainment. This is why I think I like to steer away from comparisons or some of the different petty beefs that can arise between African immigrants, Black immigrants, and African Americans or Black Americans, because by and large, while there may be some differences, there are still institutional and structural challenges that both of us face. And I think instead of bickering, complaining, and fighting over small differences that don't really make a huge difference in the larger scheme of things, it's a lot more productive to celebrate the aspects of the different cultures that actually are beneficial. But anyways, those are my thoughts. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. Leave your questions, comments, concerns in the comment section below. Also, be sure to check me out on Patreon, where I'm doing book reviews. You can also become a channel member for as little as $4.99. And be sure to check out my latest book, Aisha Learns to Love Her Hair, where I teach young girls how to learn and embrace who God created them to be. Thank you so much for listening. If you've gotten this far, we'll talk later. Bye.